So I'm Congolese and my husband is Cameroonian, but we're not choosing to move to any of these countries for now. And this is why. I'm going to try to explain why because it's a little complex. And one of the reasons why it's complex is because even though I'm Congolese, I have never lived in the Congo. I was born in Morocco, but I'm not Moroccan. And we're choosing Côte d'Ivoire for very simple reasons. In another video, I talk more about specifically Côte d'Ivoire, specifically Abidjan, why we are choosing Côte d'Ivoire and the things that we love about Côte d'Ivoire that make this transition smoother from the US to sub-Saharan Africa in general. And why not the Congo, why not Cameroon right now as the first exit point? First reason is because of convenience. It's because of convenience, because if you're looking at infrastructure, if you're looking at cost of living, if you're looking at context, if you're looking at these political and economic stability, these would be the main reasons why we are not choosing the Congo, and by the Congo I mean the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Cameroon as our first point of exit. There are a lot of people who would go to Cameroon or the Congo as their Black Sea destination or returnees because that's where they're from. But in our case, it's not the first point because, one, like I said, infrastructure is not as at the level where we would feel comfortable going to with a family with young kids. Water, electricity, yes, you have all of that, but it's not as fluid or as consistent as it can be in other countries like Morocco or even Kenya or even Côte d'Ivoire in our case. And there's also a reason why Morocco is not on the list of where we're going, even though it could be a good destination. So it's Congo, Morocco, Cameroon, and why we're not going to these three as our first exit point. Political and economic stability. I don't know if you're aware, but in both the Congo and in Cameroon, there are there's instability in specific regions. So now we are not, if we were to go to these two countries, we would not go to these regions. Like in the Congo, we're not from the eastern part of the Congo. My family is from the western part of the Congo. So we would not be directly affected by the conflicts. However, it's not ideal. It's not ideal in terms of, again, going with a family, young children, and all of that. It's not ideal. If anything pops, which it has in, I think, last year or 2 years ago, and then a lot of the embassies were closed and things like that, then you're on your own. Like, you have to make arrangements to leave overnight. For any country you're going to, when you're moving by yourself or with a family, you need to have that exit strategy, those emergency funds, just in case something happens and you're not going to rely on the embassy for you to get on the plane. You just have to go. Like, can you afford to take the first plane, pack your bags, and leave without having to wait on officials to make arrangements for you and all of that, right? So you have to be in a position where you can make that happen on your own. And so being in an environment where there's more fragility in terms of stability, that's another reason why we're not picking these two countries. Another reason specifically for the Congo, which is not the case for Cameroon, is the cost of living. The Congo imports a lot of goods, and so that makes the cost of living very high if you're not just relying on local products. And for, there's this whole conversation about, you have to live like a local, but realistically, what does a local mean? Like, what kind of lifestyle are you going to mimic? And is that comfortable enough for you. Because if you are comparing the lifestyle of, let's say, somebody who lives on $200 a month, the equivalent of $200 a month, and you living with, let's say, the equivalent of $5,000 a month in the US, there's a huge discrepancy there. So you're not going to have similar lifestyle like at all. And so talking about living like a local, it can be done in certain countries where the cost of living and the comforts are similar, like let's say Western Europe and the US, but not necessarily a developing country like the Congo and comparing it to the US, right? So living like a local is not realistic. So you're going to have to purchase a lot of imported goods, and that is going to increase your price point, and your cost of living might be a lot higher than it is here in the US because of that. Not only education, so sending the kids to international schools, lodging as well. Accommodation is, if you want to live in a nice area, it might get high as well. And also just food and things like that that you are used to, that will be a lot higher because they will be imported. So cost of living in the Congo might be higher than in the US depending on your lifestyle. And now with a big family, I believe that it will be a lot higher. I don't know I don't know for sure, but that would be my guess, that it would be a lot higher. Now, comparing it to Cameroon, and I did a video talking about our budget for Cameroon. I'm going to link it up here. Our cost of living would be a lot lower for Cameroon because of looking at languages. Just first of all, language. English speaking schools are more popular. There's more English speaking schools because Cameroon is a bilingual country. So it's not going to be as expensive to put the kids into an international school than if you're doing that in a French speaking country like like the Congo, or even Morocco, or even Côte d'Ivoire. So that's a good point for Cameroon. For Cameroon, they produce a lot more locally than in the Congo, so there are more options that are available. Sure, there's still some imports that will make the cost of living higher for certain goods, but not as high as it would be in the Congo. So there is a difference when it comes to lodging as well, accommodation, where there are some neighborhoods that are a lot more affordable and still nice and comfortable for a family coming from the US, like big family like us. Okay, so that's also another factor that makes Cameroon not ideal for right now as the first point of exit. Comfort in general it's a big factor. How smooth the transition is going to be moving from the US to the Congo, from the US to Cameroon, compared to the US to Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. The transition will be a lot smoother in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire because of infrastructure. You will not experience water cuts and power cuts as frequently as Cameroon or the Congo, again, depending on the neighborhood you pick. You will have fast internet, you will have a lot of familiarities in Côte d'Ivoire, specifically in Abidjan, that are similar to lifestyle in the US, more likely there than in Cameroon and in the Congo. So as somebody traveling, again, with a family, that's a big factor. If it's just you and you're like, okay, it's an adventure, I'm going there and we'll see what happens, sure. But with a family, you are trying to limit the risk as much as possible. In terms of networking, Cameroon will be the most ideal because of family, because of network that we already have in Cameroon The Congo, yes or no, because my family has been out of the Congo for many, many years. So it will be, yes, there's connections, but not as many. Côte d'Ivoire, yes, there's connections because of family, friends, and, so that's already something. It's not like we don't know anybody there. So that's a big plus. And that's also a reason why Côte d'Ivoire is at the top of the list, because we have an existing network there that will make our arrival smoother, that will allow us to have that soft landing that might not be the same if we were to go to Ghana or Kenya or Rwanda or another country, right, where we don't know anybody. But the fact that we already have people there that we know, that we trust, that is a big positive point. Again, a lot more in Cameroon than in Côte d'Ivoire, but because of the other points in terms of infrastructure, safety, even healthcare, will make the Congo and Cameroon less ideal for us than Côte d'Ivoire. And so that's why when I say yes, we're going home, I'm looking at Africa in general, sub-Saharan Africa in general, even though home is a difficult concept for me to explain, because depending on who's asking, depending on the context, home can sometimes be the US, could be Houston, Texas, because this is where I met my husband, this is where my kids were born, so it's home. But at the same time, home is the Congo because that's my heritage, that's where my parents are from, but I've never lived there. And so home is also Morocco. This is where my formative years happen, but I'm not Moroccan. So it's like home, it depends on it depends on my mood, it depends on how I feel, it depends on a lot of things. Sometimes home is just Africa in general. Sometimes home is here, is wherever my parents are, wherever my kids are. It's a lot of things. And so it's a little complex. And for us, specifically for this move abroad, we are considering this going home, even though Côte d'Ivoire is not our home in terms of heritage. That's not where we're from. It's not our citizenship. It's not, right? Even though it's Africa in general, so it's home, but it's not, we don't have family ties to Côte d'Ivoire specifically. And I wanted to address the Morocco, why not Morocco? And that's another complex thing and conversation that I can have in another video if you're interested in that, in my experience growing up in Morocco, specifically as a Black girl. It was something. But that's one of the reasons why I personally would not pick Morocco to move there. I love Morocco. I love the people. I have a lot of friends there. I miss Morocco. I miss the food. I miss the people. I miss a lot of things about Morocco. And Morocco is a very easy country to navigate. You can drop me anywhere in Morocco and I'll feel comfortable. I can navigate, even though I'm not super fluent in Arabic. But it's home. I'm comfortable there. However, because of PTSD, I would say, I don't feel comfortable living in Morocco again full time. I feel comfortable going there on vacation. I feel comfortable going there for like 3 months. I feel comfortable, even visiting every year. I feel comfortable with that, but I don't know. And again, that depends on the city. It depends on the city, I think, because my experience growing up was different in the north compared to during my undergrad years in Casablanca. I would say Casablanca was an amazing experience overall, but growing up in the north was terrible. So again, it depends on the city. I love Casablanca and I would go back there. Leaving Casablanca, I'm more likely to say yes to living in Casablanca than living in the north. Living in the north, it would be an absolute no. Again, because of the baggage, because of the past. But I don't know. I'm not sure I would pick Morocco. Definitely not as a first point of exit, because it's not a top priority. But cost of living, comfort, ease of things, good health care, education, there's probably a lot of options as well there in terms of English speaking schools, even though it's not an English speaking country. But I'm sure that they could we could find some good options, mostly in Rabat or Casablanca. So it's an easy yes. Having some ties there, having some friends there, easy to navigate. French is there, the kids can learn it. So Morocco, if it wasn't for the past, Morocco would be number one. But because of past experiences, growing up, not well visiting. When I visited again after I moved away, they were great experiences. Again, as a visitor, it was great. I'm not sure I would be ready to make it a more long-term move, in the north, no. But if it was like to Casablanca, I would love to spend like 3 months in Casablanca, or even 6 months. I would love to do that because I know it would be a blast. So yeah, that's the dilemma with Morocco. It checks all the boxes, but the being part of the Black majority doesn't check that, and also a heavy past experiences that is like a dark cloud over my head, just waiting for things to happen. Like being on my toes. That's the thing with Morocco. Is like I feel like I would have to be on my toes all the time, waiting to see if somebody's going to say something. Somebody's going to say something shady to me. And that's not how I would love to live life. So that's the complexity with Morocco. Anyways, so why we are not choosing the countries that we're logically connected to, the countries that are quote unquote home to us, that are where we're from. Why we're not choosing Morocco, why we're not choosing Cameroon, why we're not choosing the Congo as our black sit destinations, or at least not our first exit points. We can add them after after Côte d'Ivoire, but Côte d'Ivoire has to be first because it's a smoother transition, because it checks the boxes, and it's just an easier yes for Côte d'Ivoire. And then the second destination after that could be any of those three. So we will see. But for now, Côte d'Ivoire is number one. All right. So any questions that you have for me about this, just let me know in the comments, and I'll be more than happy to come back and talk more about that. Okay. If you have any video ideas that you have for me, any questions that you want me to address in a different video, let me know in the comments as well. Okay. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.